Folks say the loudest sound in the High Mesa country used to be gunfire. They're wrong.
Welcome to Wild Horizon Stories. Like, share, and subscribe to join the journey.
The loudest thing we had was the silence that fell over an entire valley 3 times a day, whenever my father shut his watch with a click and walked toward the little stone house by the windmill. Didn't matter what was going on. Stampede, lightning storm, bankman on the porch with a foreclosure paper. If it was sunrise, high noon, or sundown, my father would hand his reins to the nearest hand, take off his hat, and disappear into that stone shack for near on half an hour. 3 times a day, every day, for 20 years. The ranch hands got used to it. The neighbors never did. My father was Luke Merriweather, owner of Double M, biggest cattle spread from the Sangre Ridge clear to the Utah line. People called him the Cattle King of High Mesa. They also called him a stubborn son of a gun, and that was from folks who liked him. He'd carved the ranch out of sagebrush and rock back when the only law wore cavalry blue and didn't ride out much. He'd fought rustlers and drought and banks, and more than one man who fancied himself faster on the draw. By the time I was old enough to ride a fence, every critter and cowpoke within a week's ride knew my father's name and his brand. But what they talked about more than his cattle was that stone house. It sat 50 yards from the main bunkhouse, square and ugly, with walls 2 feet thick and a single iron door. No windows, just a slit under the eaves where the wind moaned. He'd built it himself back when I was little, hauling rock like a common laborer even though he already had a dozen men on the payroll. No one was allowed in there. Not the foreman, not the bookkeeper, not even my mother when she was alive. Only him, 3 times a day. It's where he keeps the gold, old man Rawls from the Rockin' R used to say over poker in Las Cruces. Got all them railroad men paying him under the table. He must be stacking it like firewood. Others said different. Money, muttered the sheriff once after too much whiskey. Enough to arm an army. Man that wary of windows ain't counting coins in there. He's getting ready. Some whispered worse. They said he had Apache in there, or Mexican bandits, that he met enemies in that room and planned out how to take the whole valley for himself, that he'd lost his mind and sat in there polishing the skulls of men he'd killed back in his gun hand days. I knew it wasn't that last one. My father didn't talk much about those days, but sometimes, late, when the other sounds of the ranch had gone quiet, I'd hear him in the kitchen with my mother, his voice low and rough with something like shame. "Never again," he'd say. "Long as I draw breath, Annie. Never again." Whatever he was doing in that stone house, it wasn't polishing trophies. I was 15 the first time I tried the door. He'd gone in at noon like always. Sun was sitting hot and white overhead, men moving slow in the glare. I should have been in the south pasture looking to a sick calf. Instead, I slipped off, heart drumming in my throat, and crept to the wall like I was sneak thieving my own home. I pressed my ear to the cool stone. Inside, nothing. No scrape of chairs, no murmur, just the wind. On a wild impulse, I reached for the handle, certain it would be locked fast. It turned under my hand. I sucked in a breath, eased the door an inch. A shaft of bright light from behind me cut into the dark, dust motes whirling. I saw the edge of a table, the toe of my father's boot. His voice, calm and level. "You gonna come in proper, son, or stand there letting flies in?" I froze like I'd walked into a rattler's nest. "Pa, Door or no door, this room's mine," he said. "Shut it." I stepped inside and pulled the iron heavy behind me. My eyes took a moment to adjust. There wasn't any gold. No guns stacked in pyramids, no crates of dynamite, no skulls, thanks be. Just 3 plain tables, 3 straight-back chairs, 3 oil lamps, crates along one wall sagging under ledgers and paper, ink bottles lined neat, a map of the whole valley on one wall, pinned with little colored tags I'd never seen before. My father sat at the middle table, shirt sleeves rolled, spectacles perched on his nose. In front of him lay a stack of envelopes, a ledger, and a small wooden box. He regarded me for a long, unreadable moment. "Your bleeding curiosity, might as well have a look." He pulled out the nearest chair. I sat. He opened the little box. Inside were scraps of paper, each with a name scrawled in my father's hand. Apache words, Spanish words, English words, names of places, of people. He picked one slip and set it in front of me. Elias Gomez, note paid, it read. I frowned. Who's he? Family down by the cottonwoods near Las Piedras. Tried running a few head on 50 acres. Good hand, bad luck. Signed a note with the bank at 15% just to get seed in the ground. I shrugged. And? He opened the ledger. On one page was a neat column of names, beside each dollar amounts, some big, some small. I bought his note from the bank, my father said quietly. Cut the rate. He still couldn't make it. Last year I forgave the debt and deeded him another 30 acres of creek bottom. That paper there is me reminding myself I ain't doing charity. I'm repaying old debts. I stared. Old debts? You never borrowed from. Not that kind, he cut in. This kind. He slid another scrap forward. Mesa Band, 10 winter beef. I knew that name. Apache who maintained a small camp up country on the worst land the government could find. Folks in town liked to talk big about how they'd whipped them, never mind the measles and the whiskey and the lost buffalo. You giving cattle to Indians now? I blurted. He gave me a look so tired it hurt. Boy, I've been taking things my whole life. Land from them, wages from men who died wearing a different badge than me. Time from widows. You think any man builds a spread like this without standing knee-deep in somebody else's misfortune? He gestured at the room. 3 times a day, he said. Mornings for letters, noon for books and bargains, evening for the map. And what do? I asked, throat dry. I give it back, he said simply, little at a time so nobody notices soon enough to stop me. I swallowed. Give what back? His eyes went to the map, to the colored tags pinned across the valley. Everything that never should have been one man's in the first place. I didn't understand it that day, not really. I thought it was some odd private penance, a wealthy man easing his conscience in a room no one saw, while the world outside went on like always. Then the drought came. It didn't arrive like a storm, no clouds, just days and weeks where the sky baked empty and hard as a cast-iron pan. The creek shrank, ponds turned to cracked basins. We started digging deeper wells, finding more dust than water. The Double M had better water than most. A deep spring up in the basalt hills fed our windmill and tanks. When the other ranches rode in thin-faced and wanted to buy, my father sold barrels cheap, never turning anyone away. Folks grumbled that he was still getting richer off their bad luck. They didn't see the stone house. By the second year, it wasn't just ranchers hurting. The little farms along the draws went brown. Corn withered in the field. Goats and children alike grew gaunt. Down on the reservation, the government agent cut rations because his own supplies were short. Hungry men rode more often. So did men with badges. It came to a head when Malachi Brand from the Triple Spur blockaded the narrow cut they dammed on the creek above town. Water rights, he shouted from his saddle, shotgun across his lap. Triple Spur holds the only legal paper on this stretch. Any of you let so much as a bucket down here without paying, you'll pull it up full of lead. There were near 30 men in that pass, all bristling with rifles. Skinny farmers, angry ranch hands, townsfolk whose wells had gone dry. Sheriff Dobbs stood on the rocks with sweat running into his beard, both hands raised like he could hold back a flood of bullets. My father and I rode up late. He'd lost some weight that year, but he still sat his bay straight as a fence post. We eased to a stop on the edge of the crowd. Brand spat when he saw him. Here you been selling water cheap, Merriweather, he called, trying to buy yourself a halo. You can't buy this, though. Paper says it's mine. Bank paper? Asked my father mildly. Yeah, Brand said. Flows right through my land. Had it all stamped in Santa Fe, legal as a hangin'. Men around us muttered curses. A rock sailed from somewhere in the back, clattered harmless against the embankment. Brand's men tensed. My father swung down from his horse with a grunt of stiff knees. He didn't draw. He didn't reach for his rifle. He just pulled a folded document from his vest and held it up. Maybe we ought to read the newer paper. Sheriff Dobbs squinted. What are you waving, Luke? Deed transfers, my father replied. Filed last month if the clerk in Las Cruces ain't twinking on the job. Triple Spur didn't read the fine print when they borrowed to buy up that creek, I reckon. Bank sold the paper on. Brand laughed without humor. To who? You? My father nodded. To the Double M. And as of yesterday morning, the Double M don't own that water anymore either. He unfolded the largest sheet. Even from where I stood, I could see the bold letters at the top. High Mesa Common Waters Trust. My father's voice carried clear like he was reading a sermon.
I, Luke Merriweather, being of sound mind and tired conscience, do hereby transfer title of the following springs, creeks, tanks, and associated rights and easements into a perpetual, non-sellable trust for the use of all residents of the High Mesa region. He kept going. Malachi Brand's face went red, then gray. The sheriff's jaw sagged open. Murmurs rose like a wind. "You can't do that," Brand snapped. "You ain't the government." "This piece of paper says I could," my father replied. "Bought your note from the bank, paid off the rest in cattle and cash. Then I signed it over. Sheriff Dobbs witnessed." The sheriff nodded slowly, eyes never leaving the page. "I thought he'd lost his mind," Dobbs admitted, "but I seen him pay. Brand, you've been sitting on water you didn't own for 2 weeks now." "But that makes it nobody's land," Brand protested. "No, makes it everybody's." He pointed to the second page. "This trust is run by a board, 1 seat for the ranchers, 1 for the small farmers, 1 for the town, 1 for the Mesa